Hello everybody, welcome in our front-end hero meetup in Andersen. Today we'll have three nice guests who will present really interesting things. So we will have also some drinks, some food, so enjoy. So let's invite to the stage our first speaker, Evgeny Kirichuk, senior React developer at Andersen. He will speak about 6 apps in 20 minutes, cross-platforms JavaScript development with Monorepo. Sorry. So,
hello. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to see you all here. Thanks to Andersen company, we have such a great opportunity to meet. And I'm glad to take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Evgeny. I am a JavaScript developer with over 6 years of experience now. And I've participated in open source, outsource, and product development in a wide range of domains. And since this year, I've started my blog. Feel free to follow. I'll appreciate to see you here. And last 2 years, I'm working with Andersen company, which gave me a valuable experience and interesting challenges to solve. And 2 of those challenges we are going to discuss today. We are going to discuss 2 challenges with live coding sections, and after all, I'll answer your questions. In first challenge, we are going to build a brand new product. The basic requirements are 2 front-end applications and a common design system to share styles and components. The most direct way to do so is just create 2 separate repositories, one for the customer app and one for the back office app, and both repositories store components on their own. It's obviously the worst solution because to make some changes, we have to make the changes twice and to duplicate every change to every repo we have. And working in a team and making dozens of changes every day is just a matter of time when you have the complete inconsistency between your apps. So we have to improve our workflow somehow to avoid this issue. Let's move our components to a shared library. So we're able to use this library as a dependency to our applications. And as soon as you change something, you can easily update the dependency, and applications just use the most current versions of components. But let's say a big office developer are very busy with his current task, and he didn't update the dependency after the last change. And another day, the customer app developer didn't update the dependencies too. So eventually, it turns out that the current library state is incompatible with our applications. And you might say we can easily fix this situation, just use the proper team communication. And that's true, but we are going to build widgets to integrate our apps to affiliate platforms. And we will develop a variety of landing pages. And we will build new applications prototypes. So it's just too difficult to avoid a miscommunication in such a structure. But at the moment, we understand the basic requirements to our structure. We want to use the same version of components all the time, no matter what. And we want to don't let the breaking changes go live, and it would be perfect to detect them automatically. And there is a third option. This is a monorepo. This time, all the components, all the libraries and applications are in the same code base. So as soon as you change something in the components library, your application uses the very same and the very current version of components library automatically. So what's about breaking changes? Developers can still break the applications while making changes in the library, but we are not worried about it anymore, just because it's just a step in a pull request pipeline now. So only after linting, testing, and building stages, a human gets involved to review the changes. And today we're going to implement this option. And to implement a monorepo, there are dozens of tools. You can check them in this repository. Fury did a great job and combined almost all build systems and repository management tools and much more. So today I will use an Xbuild system which provides a powerful CLI to generate a workspace in one command. And thanks to code generation tools, we are able to create components in a second. And there are much more tools to improve a development daily routine. For example, not for example yet, sorry. A typical NX workspace consists of applications and libraries, so that's a very transparent concept, and NX provides a project graph to visualize your project dependencies our applications and libraries have. And the most popular concern about Monorepo I have read and heard about is a long build time and long CI/CD processes. And it makes sense because when we change something, we have to rebuild and retest all applications and all libraries we have. But NX analyzes the project graph under the hood all the time, and using a project graph, NX provides a task graph to optimize our jobs. For example, before build app 1 and app 2, I want to build a library first. And as soon as library is built, NX will build app 1 and app 2 in parallel. So the whole CI/CD speeds up. And on top of that, NX provides affected commands. So for example, when you changed something in the app 1, there is no need to retest and rebuild library and app 2. At the same time, when you changed something in the library, NX will automatically retest and rebuild app 1 and app 2, and will do it in the most effective way using task graph we described before. So let's build a monorepo. If you want to try it yourself later, there is an article in my blog and with short tutorial. So to create a monorepo, it's just not very useful with handy microphone, excuse me. So to build a monorepo, we have to generate a monorepo using command npx create NX workspace and tag latest. NX will prompt you to name your workspace. Let it be shop in our case. And we have to choose a framework to work with. A React in our case. Oh gosh. Yeah, I've chose React. And the first React application name, let it be customer in our case. Customer app. We are going to use SCSS to style our components, and we don't need the NX Cloud. So during the installation process, NX will create the basic file structures, install all the dependencies, create TypeScript, lint, test, build, configs. And there are many popular frameworks supported by NX, so you can build almost whatever boilerplate you want. As well, there is almost all popular styles engines like styled components or SCSS or SAS, whatever. So it took a while, I believe. It's a few more seconds to finish the generation process, and we will be able to open the workspace in IDE. Come on, please. Yeah. So let's open the workspace. Here it is. I believe you can see it. I'm not sure, but I believe so. Our workspace consists of libs and apps folders. Our libs folders are empty at the moment, and our apps folder consists of customer app. This is a React app already generated by NX via the workspace generation process. And let's generate the second back-office application. Let's go to the shop workspace. And to generate a new React application, we have to use command npx nxg, it means generate, using an REL React generator. This is a React generator to generate whatever with React. And we are going to generate application. And the last parameter is application name, backoffice in our case. We are going to use SCSS, and we don't need NX Cloud at the moment. It took a second, I believe, to generate a new React application. So let's check the apps folder. Now our apps folder consists of back office and customer application. And to serve them in parallel, we have to define ports they're gonna be served on. So we have to add port option, let it be 3000 for the back office app, and 3100 for the customer app. Yeah. So now we are able to serve both projects. To do so, we have to use command npx nx run many to serve both applications in parallel. And target means the command we're gonna use to both apps. In our case, serve. And projects we're gonna serve, projects, back office and customer. Back office and customer. It works, so let's open them in the browser. The first one. And a second one. Here it is. Two React applications, customer and back office, served from the common workspace in parallel. So to share components between the applications, we have to generate a library first. And to generate a library, we're gonna use a similar command, npx nxg, using an real React generator, but we are going to use a lib tag to generate a library. And let's name our library UI. And we have to choose a styles as CSS in our case. And again, it took about 1 second to generate a library. So our libs folder now consists of UI library and one command, nxGenerate library, creates the UI TSX component, the test suite, and the style sheet. Just one command instead of endless boilerplate generating, writing with our hands. So there is a pretty simple React component. Let's add here a app name property. Let it be string. And we have to show app name to be sure that our app's using the shared component. So we're going to use props app name here. And the component already exported from the library, and we can use it in applications via ls. Let's import our component, import UI from ls shop, because we named our workspace shop before, and shop UI library, yeah. And now we can use component from the library, a UI prop app name. This is a back office application. Let's type here a back office. And the same for the second application, for the customer one. We are going to import a component first and use them. Oh, shit. UI app name. This is a customer app. Okay, let's serve both applications in parallel again using the run many command. And let's update the pages. Here it is. Both applications, welcome to back office and welcome to customer, use a shared component from the common workspace and served in parallel from the common workspace. So what have we done right now? Have we just created two separate React applications with shared component library, just using 3 CLI commands in 3 minutes? That's what I found really impressive in X once I touched NX. And Is there a disadvantage to a monorepo? Sure. At first, there is no way to share access to a specific application. A developer with access to a repository has access to the whole code base. And a team must agree on a way to name commits and branches so commit history are readable and understandable. But there are advantages to monorepo. A single set of dependencies allow you not to worry about if your applications use the different versions of React, for example, and the project-wide refactoring is much easier thanks to a single code base, and all project relations, project and libraries relations are transparent. All CI/CD configs and all configuration files stored in one place, and development speeds up itself thanks to components sharing and NX features. So that's it for the first challenge. At the moment we have 2 React applications. They will work well in web, but our client decided to expand the applications distributions to the native platforms. So it means we have to build 4 native applications somehow. Okay, it sounds interesting, and there are many ways to do so. The first option is a literally build 4 separate native applications. In this case, we will provide the best native user experience, but at the same time, we have to involve much more developers to implement the native applications, and we have to increase the number of QAs and UI UX team, and another word is just too expensive. This option can certainly be used, but we are going to build an MVP version of brand new product, and we just have to expand the apps distribution, so it's not an option for us at the moment. The second option is React Native development. It's a quite popular way to build native applications using JavaScript language and React features. And this way is much faster because React Native team can reuse already prepared component from the web applications, and we can use web developers to build the native applications and vice versa. So it's just much faster, but we still need to increase the development team to build applications in parallel, and it's still time and money consuming. The cheapest and fastest options here is a WebView application. WebView is an embedded browser that can be used to show web pages inside your React Native application. It's literally about few lines of code to implement the WebView, and it's too cheap and too fast, but there might be problems with publication in the App Store, because if your application is just a link to open, so users have to open this link in browser, not in App Store. To satisfy the App Store requirements, the native applications have to implement some native features. And offline mode, in case of WebView, is tricky just because we have to implement the service worker to store the web page sources locally. And even with service worker, the very first launch won't work without the internet connection because there are no sources to show yet. So to keep the fastest and cheapest option, but to avoid the previous option's concerns, we can use the first option, repackaged WebView. Instead of open web application via the link, we can open web application itself using web application sources. And using Apache Cordova plugins, for example, we can communicate with native APIs. So this option is too fast and too cheap, but we have offline mode out of the box and ability to use native APIs thanks to Apache Cordova plugins. Of course, using this option, we will implement the less native user experience comparing to a fully native applications, but we don't worry about it just because we are going to provide an MVP version and we just wanted to expand our apps distribution. So it's okay at this case. Today we will implement this option, and to do so I will use a capacitor.js. Capacitor.js is a free and open source library, provides a CLI to generate native applications and a wide range of plugins to communicate with native platforms APIs. And let's have a look at how does it work. Quickly, your web app sources used by HTML rendering engine, WebView, and a JavaScript source code can call the Cordova plugins APIs, and Cordova plugin itself will call the native mobile APIs. So For example, using the geolocation plugin, I can write the only one line of JavaScript code, and a plugin will call the right APIs on each target platform. So it's just very easy and fast to work with. There is an important point to highlight. This is not the way to build a really integrated into the system application, but it's fast and good way to expand your application's distribution to the native platforms. So let's build the native applications. At first, we have to build our web applications using npx and xbuild command, and let's build a customer app. It should be fast. And now we have to create a separate package.json in the app directory. Let's go to customer directory, and let's create a new package.json. So now we are able to define dependencies for the application to generate a native apps. Here it is. And there are the capacitor core and capacitor Android and iOS to generate the native applications, and capacitor CLI for the development dependencies. Let's install these dependencies. And after the installation process, I have to init the capacitor application using command npx cap init. We have to name our application, let it be customer app by default, package ID, let it be default at the moment. At web assets directory is a directory where we serve our web application build. So in our case, it's dist apps customer folder. That's it. Now I can easily generate a native applications using command npx cap add iOS. Okay, and npx cap add Android. That's it. That's literally it. Let's open applications in the Android Studio. We have to open projects, our shop workspace, app, customer, Android folder. And as soon as Android analyzes the sources, we are able to launch the application. Yes, thank you. And the same for Xcode. We're going to open shop workspace, apps, customer, iOS, a workspace file. As you can see, Android Studio already launched the application, and we just have to push the play button in Xcode. And the build succeeded. So let's open the emulator. As you can see, the Android app launched in native environment, and it's a fully Android application, and the same for the iOS. There is an iOS emulator, and there is an iOS application. And that's it. Now we have the native applications in our workspace shared in parallel using the shared library components. And we just used 3 commands again to generate 2 native applications. It's literally the same for the back-office apps, so we won't repeat what have we done right now. And it's time to summarize what have we done in general. We have just created a workspace consists of 6 applications, 2 React applications and 4 native applications and shared component library. And our apps protected from the breaking changes thanks to single code base and the common pipeline for all changes. And our CI/CD processes, all configurations are configured in one place. And we expanded our apps distribution to the native platforms. And we spent about 20 minutes to do so. I understand that applications development world is so diverse, and this approach is not suitable for everyone. But I believe there are many teams and projects where the Monorepo can bring a lot of benefits. At very least, you can try it yourself, and maybe it will open up new opportunities and ideas to you. That's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions to Evgeny? You can ask right now.
Thank you a lot, Evgeny, for your topic. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
And I have a question to you. So since we have already started our migration, our code to workspaces as well, I have a question to you. Why have you chosen the NX? Because the challenge which developers face are often, happens when you already have a lot of the code and you just need to migrate the existing code to the workspaces. So that's why we just use the Yarn workspaces without any, pre-built package. So I understand that NX is useful for newly created applications, but why have you chosen it, and is it useful for already existed applications?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I believe it's a challenge to migrate whole source code to the Monorepo, of course. And NX is not the easiest option to migrate, because NX just required the well-structured code. So you had to structure your code into components, into business logic, into utils, into smaller and most focused units. So if you have a really big code structure in your existing project, it might be difficult. And there is no simple way to migrate to NX. There are many articles in NX documentation about migration and much more, but it's not easy in any way. Why you have to choose NX? Because it's just really simplified the daily development routine. I use NX in a real project right now, and it just speeds up the development a lot thanks to code generation and thanks to task graph, all I described today. But there is no simple way to move the really big code base to the Monorepo anyway. Thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you. And the second question, is it only useful for boilerplating, like creating workspaces, or is it useful for CI as well? Because I missed the line.
Yeah, it's useful for CI as well. As I described many slides before, NX creates a project graph, as you can see, to analyze your code relations, and thanks to project graph, it builds a task graph. And during CI/CD processes, NX will execute your commands in parallel. So instead of build app 1, app 2, app 3, app 4, you build all the apps in the same time. So it's just 4 times faster in that case.
Okay, thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for this question. Anybody have also another question? No? Okay, so thank you, Evgeny, for your presentation. So we will take short break, 15 minutes. During this break, you can drink, you can eat, you can conversation, and we'll see another second speaker in 15 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, it's time for our second speaker. It's Andrzej Mazur, founder of Enclave Games. His topic is building games in 13 kilobytes. Andrzej will talk about how limitations spawn creating in the JS 13K games competition. Please.
Thank you. Hello. So my name is Andrzej Mazur. I'm building games, web games, for over a decade. I founded the Enclave Game Studio, started the JS 13K games competition. How many of you heard about the competition before the meetup? Okay, that's exactly the number of people knowing this previous time. So it's not that well known, but it's getting there. It started in 2012, but there's still time. I'm also organizing the GameDevJS meetups and sending out the GameDevJS weekly newsletter. If you're into web games, you most probably ended up learning about some of those things. If not, then I'm doing this wrong. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the JS 13K Games competition, which runs since 2012, yearly, online, between August 13th and September 13th. So you have a whole month to create a game for the competition, where the challenge and the fun part is that the game have to fit in 13 kilobytes zipped. Zip package, 13 kilobytes, unpacked a little bit more, but it's still quite a challenge. I mentioned it started in 2012. We had announcing the winners of the first edition at the On Game Start conference, which was purely about HTML5 games. It was fun. And 2012 is also a year when Enclave games started, which is also huge and popular and consists of me as a programmer and my wife as a graphic designer, and that's it. Sometimes our daughter is a tester when she breaks our games, but that kind of works as well. So why would you consider participating in JS 13K? It's fun, it's quite a challenge. Not every developer, not to say every game developer, would be able to participate in something like this. Interestingly enough, you can grow your skills by exploring wild JavaScript things that you can do with code that you usually don't do during your workday. You can meet some fellow developers. You can win cool prizes. We are shipping free t-shirts every single year to top 100 entries worldwide since the very beginning. So you can at least participate for grabbing the t-shirt, if not for anything else. So to give you a little bit of like depth into it, 13 kilobytes is quite small. For example, if you launch the website, visit any of the game's pages, there is a small screenshot for 100 pixels per 250, which is like, this one in particular is like 25 kilobytes, more or less. So the small screenshot, you can't even see much, is bigger than the game itself, where the game itself is basically Quake 1 with multiple weapons, levels, enemies, and whatnot. So I think that's quite impressive. Like, I have absolutely no idea how someone did that. I mean, I have vague idea of which tools they use, but it's still kind of impressive that it's not like I mean, I could build a breakout clone in 13 kilobytes, maybe, while there are people building something like this in 13 kilobytes. So that's kind of impressive, I think. So one of the most important things when the competition was starting was that it would be nice to learn something from it in a way that instead of just participating, when you submit a game, you have to also, you have to send the zip, which is like minified, crunched, and everything else to make it 13 kilobytes. But then you also have to provide a readable source code with comments and everything of that particular entry. So in the span of the past decade, there were 1,770 entries, and every single one of those, including that one that I showed you, is on GitHub, and you can actually check the source code of that game on GitHub and see how those crazy people build that. Plus there are postmortems, which are like articles about the specific entry that someone built, what went good and what could have been improved. So that's also what went bad. So the thing is, every single game that is on the website, you can play it. You can also check the source code on GitHub and see how it was built. So the postmortem I mentioned. It's literally things that I have absolutely no idea how they work, like, oh, let's add some textures, let's make a map, let's generate this stuff, and let's try to make a whole level in like 3 kilobytes, but because you need like there's literally sounds and music. There is a whole track playing in the background, composed by a composer. And there are sounds. And all that was like fitted in 13 kilobytes. So I think that's like wild. I wouldn't make this in 13 kilobytes, and it's like just the logo. So you can actually, if you understand those things, you can just go through the article and learn how that entry was built, play it, see the source code, do whatever you want with that knowledge. So the cool thing, I think, about the competition is that it's not the usual when you are studying and you can you don't need sleep. All you need is like energy drinks. And it could work for like 48 hours, which is fun to some point. But then the idea was to have more time to actually build something, even if you're working full time, even if you like go for 2-week vacations, something like that. So basically the 30 days for building a game. Of course, there are people who like realize this 2 days before the end that they haven't even started and do something over the weekend. This could work, but it doesn't have to. So it's nice that you have 30 days to build something for the competition. And you could imagine that the size is the biggest problem, but if you set your mind right, if you know how to approach things, how to approach problems, how to solve them, size is not that much of a problem. Because like many participants were saying that it was mostly time that they were running out, even though it was a whole month. So those 13 kilobytes, that's quite a lot. You can squeeze a lot of things if you know how to do it, which I will tell you a little bit in the next slides. And I like this quote, limitations spawn creativity, because you have to have a lot of creativity and like hacking and learning weird things to actually be able to squeeze stuff into 13 kilobytes. So let's look at a few different things that are weird but works. Like when you start a page, an HTML page, you actually don't need most of the tags. If you put a style tag because, well, you want to set a background and you need the canvas element and the script to start the JavaScript code to do something on the canvas, that's it. You don't need more. You don't need HTML. You don't need like title, body, head, whatever. It's like those things will work because HTML, head are extra tags that take extra space that we want to get rid of. Loading images. You don't need images. Like, you don't need image files. You can store images as data. Data image, PNG, base64, and then it nicely zips in the package because every file will add something to the zip process. So people who built for the competition for many years are using only one file, index.html, with like everything in it embedded because that zips better. Level data, like why would you use zeros if they can be omitted? Why use commas or like whatever? This is the enough information needed to actually generate something for your 2D level. It works. You can generate sounds. You don't need to have files if you try to squeeze an MP3, which is like 3 megabytes, it won't work. So you can actually use tools like JS Fixer or something like that that will just, literally this thing is a song that plays on the computer. And it kind of resembles something, so it's quite impressive, I think. So the right approach, if you procedurally generate most of the stuff, then you will literally have many entries are submitted, which are 7 kilobytes, 8 kilobytes, because they had no idea what to add next because the game was already finished. So if you generate stuff, it kind of works. So even the screenshot that was 25 kilobytes, you don't need images that big, or you don't need images at all. And it's not like you have to build from scratch. There are many tools that you can use. There is actually a resources page, which is this long. That was the list started from a few items, and it grew over the years because people were like, oh, I like this tool, but I could change 5% of it to my needs and then publish my own library, so we have a lot of them. There's also a whole bunch of postmortems, so those articles about the games people built and how they built it. So the resources list is quite long. So for example, when you would like to participate, you can choose a micro library, which is, for example, it could be Contra, which takes I don't know, 3 or 4 kilobytes for the render loop and all the things. You can create your artwork in Pico, use the JSFXR for generating sounds, create music, then crunch it. But don't try this at home, those things, because it's I mean, maybe you can try this at home. Don't try this at work, at least not to that scale, because people went bonkers and why would you use math.p when you can create a global variable named p, and it will have a shorter amount of characters, and it will also work. Or the removing extra tags, what I mentioned earlier. String constraints, you don't need the whole string when you know what does the string do, or rendering everything, no needing any images. Shortening class names because you know what does that mean, so it works, doesn't matter. And my personal favorite was that someone was struggling with the single last byte, and they removed the space from the game over sign, and it worked. So, yeah. So, why am I telling you all this? Don't use all of that. Don't behave like this. Don't use that. I mean, use that. It's really fun. And if you ignore the part where you do weird things with the code that you wouldn't normally do in your work, there's also a different aspect to it. There are many things people learned in the competition which they applied to running a game dev company, or doing your front-end job right, which hopefully I'm gonna present to you in the next slides. So all those games built over the years can teach us something that we can actually use in work, in front-end work. And I think like the first and the most important is having your scope properly defined at the very beginning of your project. Because this is like a few years ago on the HTML5 game development forums, whenever someone new was writing something about things they are working on, 99% of the projects were like, oh, I'm building an MMORPG. And it was like almost done, 1% done. And it's like I drew a map and it's almost finished. And yeah. If you want to start with something, start small. Try to build tutorial examples. Try to build a small game. Throw things out of it. Try to have your initial scope as small as possible. So it's actually possible to finish the project, because with those MMORPGs, it's like after 2 or 3 years, it's like, that's not gonna work. So it's better to understand that before those 2 or 3 years. Another interesting concept is that people who participate in the competition, when they build a prototype that works, have a way bigger chance of actually finishing and submitting the game, because they can actually work on something that already works. So it's not like, oh, let's hide in the basement for 2 years, try to build this MMORPG, but you can't even show it to anyone because there's nothing working. So if you build something like super simple, super small, like a rectangle jumping or like moving or whatever, that's already your prototype that if you build on top of it, if something works, perfect, then this is your baseline. If it's not, then you can return to the working prototype, to the previous version. So it's not like you spend the whole month and you think it works, and then it crashes and you have absolutely no idea which out of the 215 functions broke it. So if you have a working prototype, just use that to move forward. Something I learned the hard way is that if you're learning something, if you're building something out of passion, if you want to have it, like, especially with like very first project or very first game, you want this to be perfect. And I had that for like, it wasn't an MMORPG, but it still contains monsters, spells, levels, maps, and weird shit. So it was a game that was supposed to be perfect. It was my very first game. And I spent like a few years trying to build it, which the game itself was quite simple, but every few months there was new engine or new technology or new approach that I wanted to try. So I started the game from scratch 7 times in 4 years. And I still had 0 games released. So at some point after, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I decided to throw that project away and build something small. Like flying like a spaceship avoiding asteroids, and like throwing, like shooting was like optional, so I threw it away. You didn't even need to shoot. It was like flying, avoiding asteroids. There was some bonuses because it was easy, because it was like an asteroid, but it didn't kill you. And there was some gameplay, and it lasted for like, I don't know. And like literally after building this stupid, simple game, it was, I don't know, 2013-ish or 14-ish or something like that. when I experienced finishing a game and releasing a game and saying, hey, this is my finished game, then for the next few years, I was traveling around the world telling people how to make web games because it worked for me once. So it was really like the imposter syndrome was like so heavy, like, you know, throwing this perfect project in next games with some features out of that original super big game. So I learned all those things separately while finishing games and releasing them. And after, I don't know how many years and 10 games later, I actually sat down, took that project, wrote it from scratch in like 2 months, and released it. But it took me that many years to realize that it was not the best approach. So one thing you have to realize, especially at the beginning, is that you suck. And even if you have a perfect project in your mind, it's not gonna happen, at least in the next few years. It's really important to separate the project you are working on from the time you are spending learning things, releasing projects, and actually getting to a point where you can actually sit and create something and release it. So there are things you know, there are things you don't know, and there is like a whole lot of things you have absolutely no idea you don't know about. So realizing how vast the technology is, how many things you could use but have no idea they exist. This is kind of important to comprehend that you work on things that you already learned, you are trying to explore things that you heard about but only heard about, and it's still a lot to learn to actually be able to do things. But it's not like I won't do nothing, I won't do anything because I don't know how to do it. It's like, let's have reasonable steps, reasonable checkpoints, reasonable prototypes, and then if you focus, if you really want to do that thing, that perfect project from your dreams, you can actually do it, but there's a lot more work you need to do than you think there is. Sorry about that, but it's true. So you do have to have a plan. It's like, it could be chaotic. It could be like, I don't know, building one game a month, one game a year, one front-end project using this technology or that technology. Let's try this framework, whatever. It have to make some kind of sense for you. Like, let's see if I can build MMORPG after 10 years of like building things that could add to MMORPG or something like that. And if the plan is stretched in like 5 or 10 years, that's perfectly fine. It will change so many times anyway. So, but it's really, really great to know what you are doing and where you want to go. I think this is the most important thing to take from this presentation, that the more simple things that you try to build, try to release, the better, for the sake of them and the sake of you. Because I think like the most important thing when you look for developers releasing games is that I don't care if someone is building a Warcraft clone or like the next biggest MMORPG, if they can't even show me anything working. But if they have a portfolio of like 10, 5, 7 simple games, I already know that they can go through the whole process of like prototyping, adding features, removing things that don't work, having a deadline, releasing a product, getting feedback, adding updates, moving to the next project, starting the same thing all over. So releasing 10 simple games will make you way better developer, at least game developer, than like trying to build something big that takes just too much time and energy. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do this. You totally can, and many of you probably did. So it's not like it's impossible, but from my experience, releasing smaller projects gradually works better. It might not work for you, but it could. So like, don't stress too much, keep calm, iterate, add things, remove, expand on the prototype, release games, learn, evolve. You don't need to change the game engine 7 times in the exact same game. You can take a simple core mechanic, make a game, release it, then experiment with the next game engine, building another game, because in the game development market, publishers buy licenses usually by numbers, like, okay, you have 10 games. We don't care if those are MMORPGs or like Flappy Birds. We pay for 10 licenses. So even from that point of view, it's more profitable to just release simple games that try to build an MMORPG. Of course, this also works, like there are bigger studios who will make millions of dollars on a single product. But the more popular approach that gets you somewhere is that if you iterate, if you build small, it will work better for you. So if you're building something, you can remove extra features like the spaceship don't need to shoot. It could be a feature of the 2.0 version. So you can work on that when the first version succeeds, for example, or just totally ignore it. And it's kind of important to not sit in a basement for 2 years, but work in the open. That's still kind of hard for me, but because I would like to polish the game, make it nice, and then show it to people. But it works a lot better, especially for many participants of the jam, that they are sharing what they are building. And it's not like, oh my God, someone will steal my idea or steal my code or whatever. But it's actually, those games are ending really high in the overall results because they get actual feedback from other people, random people on the internet or like participants, other participants of the jam. And like things that when you focus on your little project, on your baby, it's really hard to notice. And other people will be like, oh, you forgot about this. And like, you're right. So that's kind of important. And like it adds a lot to the project. Other people looking at it, having some opinions, or like 90% of the things that went wrong with the competition entries is that the games are too hard. Because the only person that was playing the game the whole time before submitting was the creator, which knew exactly what to do, when to do, how to do it. So they tried to make the game kind of difficult, but not that much. But then when someone have no idea how to play the game, they're like, okay, I died. This makes no sense, bye. So like having people who are outside of the project try the game, see if it's not too hard, that's quite a challenge. But it's really profitable for the project. So feedback, what I already mentioned. Listening to other people suggesting something, but not taking everything seriously, because maybe they have like totally different approach. They like other genres of games or like whatever. It's still your project, so you decide. It's not like you're gonna change the visuals or like gameplay because one person said they didn't like it. testing all the things, throwing test builds at people. It's like when the last day of the competition, when you have to submit the game, people are actually building the games and like actually launching and seeing if it works, and they have all those bugs, all those issues, which if they iterated, if they built on top of the prototype, that would be avoided. And like testing along the way, sending builds and seeing if getting feedback from people, or like people testing those games, those things actually work. It's hard to get good testers or like react to feedback properly, I know, but it's definitely worth it. And you can have your dream project on which you can work like years and like never release it. And cool thing about the competition is that there's a deadline. And if you want to participate, you have to submit something that kind of works. And I mean, I'm not taking pleasure from watching people doing what they are doing on the exact same day, but I'm telling them about it next year, a month before that deadline, and they are like, yeah, whatever. But seeing people throwing away features because they didn't have time to test it or like make it work properly, that hurts, but I'm really proud of those people who are brave enough to like throw a piece of code that was working perfectly fine or almost perfectly fine, or like to them was quite important, just to be able to release the project. Because there's a deadline. If you want to participate, if you want to get prizes, you have to say stop at some point and like ship it. I said about the 2.0 version, you can always add features afterwards. Many successful games that were submitted to the competition, people were working on the post-competition versions, and a bunch of those were like released on Steam, and you can actually buy those games on Steam, which started as a demo, as a prototype in the competition. But many things were removed. But the concept itself was so popular that the developer was working on the next builds. So it's quite difficult, but it's important to actually focus and like release that build, that last build that kind of works, but it's not gonna be better. And with the deadline, it's like what I said with those simple games. Finish, release, try to build the next one. If you have time, you can add features, you can juice it. Juiciness is that thing that makes the game feel nice, have special effects. There is a great presentation about taking a breakout clone and adding so many juiciness to it that it looks like a top hit, like a perfect game, even though the game mechanic is a breakout itself. So if you have time, you can add those some things. It's not like last day, 3 minutes before the deadline and something is not working. If you do it properly, more or less, you will have time to add some features. So to summarize, if you work on any project, especially if it's your own, if it's a game dev project, if it's any front-end project, whatever, there are 3 things that you should remember after that talk. The first is KISS, keep it simple. So, build a small thing, iterate, etc. The second is KISS, and the third is KISS. So if you stick to it, you should be fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions to Andrzej? Here, okay.
Hi, thanks
Hello.
for your presentation. I have a small question. Why? Why 13 kilobytes only? And second,
yeah.
can you present example for your games?
Sure. So why 13 kilobytes? Actually, the very first question, the very first answer in the FAQ is why exactly 13 kilobytes? The short answer is why not? But there is a longer version, which is when it started around 2012. There were a few competitions, mostly front-end competitions, in which you had like 10 kilobytes to build a website. And I was thinking there was also a JS1K, where you could use 1 kilobyte of JavaScript to build anything. So I thought, okay, so JS1K was nice, but it was really limiting, and you couldn't build much out of it in terms of like gameplay. So it was hard to have JS1K for games specifically, even though some people built game-like demos. And so 10K sounded nice, but it would be like yet another something 10K competition. But like 10K-ish was like, that was enough to build something. But so then I was like, okay, maybe not 10, but like 11 makes no sense. 12 as well, 13. That sounds interesting. Yeah, lucky number, exactly. So out of 13 kilobytes, the competition runs online between August 13th and September 13th. The very first theme was the number 13, or like second, the first one like bad luck or something like that. I don't remember anymore, but like the next few years was like bad luck, 13. And it was so catchy. Since then, number 13 is my lucky number, and that's how it started, and it went insane, and people kind of liked it, so it sticked. And the other was about the games. I mean, Enclave games, right? So, for example, like Bodyguard. It's like super complicated game where you have to like defend your organism from like viruses, and that's it. And you just tap on the screen, and that's basically it. That's the whole game. So those are like really, really simple games. I can confirm you can actually make a living out of selling licenses of that simple games. So it's not that much, but I wasn't focusing too much on the games themselves, but also on the competition, other things. But you can earn money from building those type of games. Thank you. Any more questions? Yeah. Yeah. If you want a mysterious CD with all the games from 2018 competition, it's yours. Yeah, so the library, the most popular library was Contra, which was like 3-5 kilobytes and doing like simple, giving you a boilerplate good enough to build something on top of it. We already have, like for this year, we will have a battle between 3 different game engines created specifically for the competition. So there's Good Luck and there's Little.js. And all those 3 have different approaches to building games for size-constrained competitions. For example, JS13K. So, yeah. Any more questions?
Yeah, we have in here one more question.
So you were speaking about 13K games. and it is about limit on size of zip file. But is there a limit on memory usage? Because often there is a case because we have limited memory usage, not disk space.
So that reminded me of some crazy experiments people were doing that you can actually So answering your question, there is no limit on the space you can take in memory. So you can generate a lot. So there is no limit to what you can generate out of the code that you squeeze into 13 kilobytes. But imagine having a game which is 13 kilobytes zipped, showing you a loading bar for 3 minutes. And after 3 minutes, when they unpack bazillion gigabytes of stuff, you can do something with it. But most of the people are no, I'm closing it. It worked. If you were patient enough, you had I think it was something like Worms Armageddon generated terrain that you could destroy, and the maps was huge. But you had to wait 3 minutes for it. And people were like, I can play 15 games in that time. So you could do it, but you have to make the player happy, and when they wait 3 minutes for the game to load, they are not happy.
Okay, thanks.
I think there was one question there.
The question is about very simple games like Space Invaders. I made one half year ago, only in JS, clear JS. And my question is, better way is to do it with Canvas or without it on the array? I mean, which will take less space.
So I will reply with a guy that is building games only in CSS.
Okay.
And, and make them 3D, full 3D games in pure CSS without a line of JavaScript.
That's crazy. Okay.
So it really depends on your approach. I mean, you can make a Quake 1 clone in 13 kilobytes. It's insane. So there are things that you can make that will be faster in JavaScript only. You can mix. It could be Canvas. It could be just HTML DOM structure. There are games that are using only DOM. There are games that are using Canvas. There are games that are using 3D context, WebGL, and the games are 3D. So
I'm sorry, I will stop you because I thought it will be less kilobytes and faster. But at the end, I think that it wasn't because I mean each point in the array it was a class, so class alien, class shoot, and because of that fact, on the one point on array there were 3 classes. And I think that it took too much working space.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on your skills.
And it was my fault. And after everything, I thought it's not a good problem.
A few years ago, in the rules section, when people were asking about different technologies, and it was literally 5 or 7 years ago, if you can use this, if you can use that. Somebody asked if you can use WebGL, and I said, well, you can use it, but it could be pretty hard to build an FPS, first-person shooter, and few people took that too seriously, and they actually started building first-person shooters in 3D in WebGL, and they were blazingly fast, and they still had half of the space available because. It's
with my problem was the biggest problem was that sound effect took too much space and
Yeah, usually.
I mean like casual phone, like low cost phone won't do that.
Yeah, it's like there are some crazy people that like focus on some aspect and they can produce fully like all the sounds and like literally different soundtracks for different levels and still have some space left. I have absolutely no idea how that's possible, but the code is there. You can look into it. So it's insane. I mean, it evolved over the years. The first entries in 2012, they didn't have any sound at all because it was really difficult to play anything. There was no WebGL because the smaller boilerplate was like 50 kilobytes or 100 kilobytes. So it wasn't even possible to build anything. But like fast forward a decade later, it's like, yeah, whatever. The guy that built Quake Tribute made RTS game with like different units, full 3D and all, and it's like, it was like, yeah, whatever. Why not? I can. So it's possible.
That idea on your slide with change not to use only MP3 or whatever wave or whatever, just generate that sound. It's a great idea. I didn't had it in mind. Just
you could like files are expensive. If you can generate it, it's like
great.
It will be
Thank
way
you.
way smaller. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, I think we can grab a pizza or so.
Yeah, so thank you, Andrzej, for your presentation. Right now, I would like to invite three our guests, Andrzej, Evgeny, and Piotr. Please. And we have some gift for you. All right, thank you very much, guys. So let's take a short break. We have some pizza for you. So grab the slice, grab the drink, and enjoy.
Hello.
Okay, so thank you very much. Right now we will have our last speaker, but not last in our Andersen meetups. So let's invite Piotr Zientara. He is a CEO at Xfaang and CEO founder of WarsawJS Foundation and leader of WarsawJS community. He will be speaking about communication as a hard skill. Please.
Nice to see you guys and girls and everyone. I'm happy to see you, and I would like to share my gratitude to Andersen for inviting me and being here with you Andrzej, and with you Evgeny. I'm happy that you're here and I can speak with you. So, yeah, today I wanted to say something to express my controversial thought that actually we brought at Xfaang, that communication is actually a hard skill in many ways. In many ways, it's a hard skill. It has some soft components, but it's also a hard skill. And this presentation will be a little bit more interactive. I would like to ask you a lot of questions, like, for example, who is today at Frontend Hero Meetup? Aha. Not everyone participates actively, okay? And who of you is a front-end developer? Hands up, please. Everyone who is a front-end developer, okay. And who works in IT? Hands up. Okay, you don't. Oh, interesting. And tell me, tell me, Andrzej, how is this possible that you? Okay. And the last question for the warming up: who of you has ever paid some conscious effort in developing your communication skill? Hands up. So after this talk, every one of you can answer this question in a positive way because this is what we are going to do now. So we will put some effort into having a better communication skill that maybe is also a hard one. So my name is Piotr Zientara. As Piotr said, I'm the CEO of Xfaang, but I was also a developer for almost 9 years, and I'm still actually actively contributing to certain GitHub repos at WarsawJS and not only. And yes. Okay, and yes, and besides WarsawJS is also a welcoming community. I will tell you more about this later. So, why communication is hard? Why people who specialize in communication think that communication is hard? It doesn't mean necessarily that it's a hard skill. It's instead of a soft skill, but it's actually hard. And people say, hey, why we failed, why we couldn't deliver this project, why we lost the client, because usually they say, oh, because we missed something in communication, and communication is hard. So actually that's the biggest obstacle why we cannot continue our cooperation. And this means that actually communication provides projects. It saves projects, it saves clients, it saves time, because when we communicate well, we know what we are doing, and we know what are the client's expectations, and we know what are the project management expectations, and so on and so on. So it's maybe a very useful thing to think about, and to know what can we actually do to make the communication more simple. So I wanted to say, first, what do I mean with a hard skill and a soft skill? And because we will analyze what actually communication is, we can also think how can we improve it. Before it will be harder. So the regular pattern that developers do, so divide big problems into small problems and solve them separately, so that we don't fail with solving a big problem. So. What is the definition of communication? They say that it's exchanging of information technology. That's what we're experts at. But do we also are we also experts in exchanging this information? Well, yes, we provide mediums. We provide a lot of messengers. We provide the whole technology for communication. Actually, the whole IT is about improving communication. So what's wrong with the concept? Do we understand it well? So let's think about soft skills. What are soft skills actually? Emotional intelligence. So when people understand well what are their own feelings and feelings of their interlocutors, of their partners, of everyone around them, co-workers and so on. So they know what actually to say in the right moment. Emotional intelligence seems to be a better predictor of your income in the future. For example, this was very surprising because people always estimating that IQ is the most important factor, but later they found out that actually in general emotional intelligence gives better predictions. Active listening, for example, so the ability to set yourself in a way that you can understand and learn more from the other person. Openness to feedback. This is very hard because it's the ego is an obstacle. People with big ego are not open to feedback, so it's something that doesn't help this ego inflation. And this is a paradox because the more skilled you are, the more prone to ego inflation. Then so this is something some self-regulatory system. Then the more you know, the more you learn. Actually, the less you can learn in the future because you're not open to feedback of the ego inflation, for example. So adaptability and so on and so on. So these are things that are actually hard to define, and you cannot quantify your openness to feedback. Or maybe you can say, oh, I have enough feedback for today. One feedback is enough. Let's don't tell me anything about my new 13 kilobyte game because this is too much for me. Hard skills are also called technical skills or job specific. So when you grow, when you are a junior, mid, senior, you get better in this skill. So that's a very interesting thing that we can actually measure. So we observe people who are senior in something, and we can see that they deliver some better quality of their work in that particular hard skill. And listen, have you ever asked a senior developer what's the difference between front end and back end? And have you asked the same question to a junior? Well, that's interesting, because I think that this really shows up in seniority. When you ask a senior developer or a I don't know a conference speaker, what is the difference between back end and front end?
I have absolutely no idea. I make games.
Okay, sorry. So, so usually when you ask someone that is experienced, you really get a clear notion after that. However, usually people avoid speaking about technical things like what is CI and why it takes so much time to configure this continuous integration, and then they usually don't explain and say, oh, sorry, it's a technical stuff. I cannot actually put it into easy words. However, senior developers, more mature developers can actually do it, and this is something we can exercise, and it's growing with our skill. So what are the parts of communication besides listening, language, and delivery, let's say, because delivery is also important. If I had difficulties with language, with English, and with I don't know, stammering, I could deliver worse, right? So there are certain obvious obstacles in communication. However, in certain languages, like for example JavaScript, it's sometimes difficult to write something in a very understandable way. So obviously the language also is a factor here, and how people are listening, and if they are, for example, at home office, and at the same time the cat is doing something, someone is delivering the package, and I don't know, there is an egg boiled in the kitchen, and an egg boiling in the kitchen, then you can actually have issues with listening to the demo that you're watching at your work. And types of communication. This is something I think really crucial. So there are types of human interaction, and communication happens always in the context of the type of communication, on the type of human interaction that you have. So listen, it's not always cooperation, unfortunately. Unfortunately, we're not always cooperating with each other. So remember that if you have something that you call a communication issue, it might not be a communication issue. It might be a different type of human interaction. So for example, a conflict, a hidden conflict, or a competition that seems to be cooperation, or just accommodation, where people want to rather avoid cooperation because they're happy with the way that they, for example, function in an environment, and they don't want to have either conflicts or real cooperation that is effortful. People avoid effort, that's normal. We don't want to have too much effort if we cannot see a positive outcome from that for us. And sometimes it's just exchange. Sometimes it's just exchange. So I can share some of my information, and that will be useful for you. And for that I will get likes on Facebook, for example. So what are parts of listening? We always do assumptions. We always make assumptions. We always make assumptions because without it, it's not possible actually to communicate. We assume the meanings of words. We assume that someone's business is this and that. We assume that people are, for example, trustful or trustless. We try to categorize people, we put them into boxes, and after that we only interact. So it's something that we need to always remember, that we make certain assumptions, and maybe some of them sometimes should change or should be evaluated. So maybe this guy was just tired last time. It was not that he didn't like me. It was not that he didn't want to help me. Maybe he was overwhelmed. Maybe there was a different factor that I couldn't know. And and understanding and errors and everything. Well, that's already a lot. So I'm not going to go deep into all of these. The language itself is always a very, very complicated structure, and as you can see, these parts are actually quite specific. So we can learn about the meanings of words. We can learn, actually, you can read what means what. We can learn, we can have a technical dictionary where we all can see what is front-end, what is back-end, what is continuous integration, what is a GitHub repo, and so on and so on. So that we finally go into this IT jargon, which I call a language here. So what is a specific skill in communication are the routines and the pain points that we can actually target in our specific communication interactions. I want to tell you something about these routines because as I observe people who are more effective in communication, they usually have certain routines that usually improve the level of communication, and they help them later to really recall what was going on, to really demand that something what needed to be done, and set the expectations levels. So actually, some kind of hard skill things that later help to manage the soft parts. So what I listed here are several pain points that I think that I can say about. The list is not completed. The list is created by me just because I think I have to have analyzed them. So besides listening, understanding, clarity, transparency, timing, and evaluation, there might be a lot of more. However, I haven't analyzed them. So let's start with listening. So the routine is that we can really make sure that we are heard, because when we asked the other person if what actually message we send, then we can make sure. So it's something that we do in IT all the time. For example, if we send requests, HTTP requests, there is also acknowledge part, right? So we know that the second part really understood. This is very important, for example, if we have a video chat or when we send an email to someone and there is no response. They usually, I think in Polish culture, and in Anglo-Saxon, I think too, the normal timing for answering an email is 24 hours. If you don't have an answer after 24 hours, there might be some interruption. So either spam or the person decided not to engage in the conversation. So, but this is not very specific, right? Sometimes we get emails after a week, and sometimes after a month even. So we don't know. But usually if we demand from ourselves to answer to each email after 24 hours, also the people who cooperate with us will do it. So we can really apply that. Let's make maybe a short mind experiment. I want you to be here more involved, and let's think that all of things that we say and all of things that we do are received after some time. After, let's say, an hour. So we cannot get interactive like here and now. So I can say, hey, Christian, and Christian looks at me and I know that he heard me. So we don't have this feature in our reality, but now everything happens after an hour. So there is a very long time before we send the communication and we receive some answer. So what kind of communication would it be? How we would change the way we structure our thoughts, the way we deliver what we want to say. This would be there will be possibly a very strong effect on the way that we compose our thoughts, because we are not used to it. We can actually be quite clumsy when we communicate, because when we have immediate feedback, we can see if the person reacted, in what way they reacted, and then we can actually correct. Oh, did I say after a week? No, I meant this week, or next Friday. Oh, did you mean the next Friday? So this Friday, or the Friday on 27th. Aha, okay, it's better to say on 27th. Okay, so you can see that actually you can, if you have immediate feedback, you can correct it, and that's why we are not used to exercise how to make our communication immediately specific. So my thoughts here are that because maybe I will show this in a greater context. Sorry, I will show you this in a greater context with cold messaging and hot messaging. So in cold and hot types of communication, this will be a challenge for you because it's very unintuitive. But I do it deliberately because I want you to focus and to think about something in a new way. So let me do it in a moment. I will jump now to understanding. So repeating the message, of course, can cause that the understanding is higher. And when I think about this, is that sometimes when we just say a thing for a one word only one time, then there is every one of us is a neurological structure. So we all have something that we can call a defense system, or a very large pool of information that we have. And if someone tells us only for a one time one message, then we actually are not capable to integrate it to our system, which is so big and so overwhelmed in the current situation in the world, where we are actually bombarded by all the information from everywhere, that actually we don't have the opportunity to integrate this information, and we can always make sure what is the desired effect of the information, of the exchange, of our question. And most of all, the understanding comes also from the way how we understand our relationship. So if we speak to each other, are we really in the cooperation mode? Because maybe it's an exchange, maybe it's something else, maybe competition. However, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's desired to know what kind of communication frame is happening here. So at Xfaang we discovered that sometimes because developer community is very competitive, so sometimes it seems that they cooperate, but actually they compete. So it's funny because it shows that people are really more motivated to write games in a kind of competition instead of creating the game together. However, if they have the same target to win, is it possible to write in pairs the games or not?
Yeah, there are actually different developers teaming up to write a single game for the competition, which is really nice.
Okay.
They are competing for prizes.
But between groups?
But yeah,
okay.
Groups, and it's like the Slack channel is like literally people helping other people because they know that they will be helped with something.
Yes.
Oh
yeah, so maybe it's even an exchange also, but still cooperation. Well, the community, the IT community is really good in cooperation. What I also discovered by surprise when I joined IT 8 years ago, or actually 9 years ago, when I joined WRUG, Warsaw Ruby Users Group, and they were all supporting you just without for nothing. It was a absolutely crazy and amazing, and it inspired me to do WarsawJS later. So to give it back to the world because it's amazing. So yeah. So and this is something I heard all the time that, hey, why you developers are so bad in communication? You're always hired for skills, and because you have great skills, you show it on your GitHub, and you are really a good programmer, but then suddenly you get fired for bad communication. My question is the same again. Is it really communication that went wrong? Because maybe there was some conflict of interest. Maybe there was the person was not satisfied for some reason. Maybe there was some kind of abuse or undesired behaviors on any side. Because when we say about communication, we say about relationship, and not about one person whose communication can be bad or wrong or not, because there's no such thing like single communication, or maybe if we speak to each other. So the solution, the strict solution, the tool that we can apply to understand when communication goes wrong is the prisoner's dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma from the game theory shows us a situation where cooperation actually brings benefit to both sides, because if both prisoners, I will draw the situation again. There are two prisoners and they are caught, and depending on what each of them is going to do, they will either go to jail for a longer time or a shorter time. And the table looks like this: that if both of them stay silent, so they don't say anything about what actually who did what, and they say that well, nothing happened, I don't know what you're saying, they both serve 1 year at the jail. If only one of them betrays, so only one of them remains silent because he hopes the other person also remains silent, then the guy goes free who defects, but the guy who tried to cooperate goes for 3 years to the jail. So it's really risky to cooperate, because if the other side doesn't cooperate, then it's a very bad deal. So usually the game ends with this, that both of them serve for 2 years. That's the usual effect. If the game is performed, if people do experiments, I'm not going to do this experiment today because we don't have too much time. But most of you possibly will choose the defection mode. So cooperation in this situation is too risky. So in this case, this is funny, because when we iterate through the prisoner's dilemma and we do it again and again and again, then actually finally they will find out, oh no, it's a bad strategy. We're sitting all the time 2 years instead of sitting 1 year. We need to agree that next time when they will cut us, we will both stay silent. And finally it starts to work in the future, where when people learn how to cooperate and they serve in the end less time. So if you want to exercise how it works, there is a magnificent tool for that. Here is a link. I will share this also on the channels. It's also in my presentation. My presentation will be also public. You can go to this ncase.me/trust and see how it exactly works with different strategies, with repeated prisoners dilemma and many other games like this. So you can learn actually as a hard skill how cooperation works, and what is the best strategy of trust management. Trust management is something extremely important when it comes to cooperation, because we learn actually from this game that people usually are over giving, that we have usually two kind of defects. One of them is giving too much trust, and one of them having too little trust. So there needs to be you need to find a balance how to do it, and this is actually a hard skill, unless it depends on some randomness. Clarity, definition of done, adding links, the art of estimating things, and how does the task look from other perspectives. This is something always that we can see that senior developers, people who learn more, who exercise, who iterate on their skill, they do it better. They know how to. They demand the definition of done. If you get a task, Do you ask for the definition of done? Who does it? This is very important because usually it always gives you plenty of details. The details are important, right? Without the details, it's usually it takes more time to achieve a task. Maybe we would normally do things that are not needed. So let's ask about the definition of done and show how it works. There is a bug. There is a bug in the system. But why are you telling me that there's a bug in a system if I cannot see it? Where is it? Oh, it's on the home page. But can you send me a screenshot? Can you send me a link to that place exactly where the bug was? So be generous in communication to give this clarity what actually needs to be done. And transparency. All the management systems, the point of them is that we have the transparency and the manager, the client, or anyone that is expecting us to do some work can see what is the status and what is the progress. If we do it, it costs time, it costs some effort. It's effortful, however, that's cooperation. That's cooperation. Cooperation requires effort, and maintaining this transparency is important. And it's a tool. It's a tool that we learn. Either if you use Jira or ClickUp or Trello, anything of this, this single tool needs to be learned. It's hard work. So if people pay time to learn how to use this efficiently, and they have a routine that always we put the task on ClickUp and we add, we create a checklist, we show the progress, and we maintain also the written communication, then it's then the risk of bad communication is mitigated. Timing, also timing. The definition of done again. So when should be this task delivered, or when do you expect me to do it, or do I have it? When you write me, do you expect me to answer you immediately, or you are okay with asynchronous communication? And usually people answer yes. Well, you can answer me asynchronously. I don't expect you to answer it now. And then you say, oh gosh, it's so good because I was so stressed that you expect me to answer you immediately. So we can really find some space here. And adding this to calendar also is a hard skill. It's a routine, and using again the task manager for that. So timing is super important, because if you have more space to do two tasks, then you actually can do it. Can find a perfect timing when doing both of them will be more easier, right? Like I don't know, it might be a very simple task, like going to the city center and signing the documents, and at the same time you might, for example, do I don't know, register for the passport, right? At the same time, and this can help you. If you have more space, then you can gain more time in the future and be more efficient. And this is something that can help you if you always think about the timeline, but it requires again some effort. And evaluation. I'm so happy that you said about the feedback today, Andrzej, because it's something really important. That's the point where we have actually the communication with the client. So what was good? What was correct? What can I improve? What actually didn't work, and why? And here, getting the feedback and having also some earlier assumed moment for a retrospective or a moment when actually we can get the feedback, it helps, because in the future we're going to do it in a better way, right? So it's investing in long term. I know it's hard, because we invest now and we expect outcomes later, and so we actually can less enjoy with what we already have now. However, in the long term, it adds up, and for the longer perspective, it's always better. How much time do I have? Okay, 27. Checklist for you as a takeout. So, listening, understanding, clarity, transparency, timing, and evaluate. That's a lot. Take at least clarity. Why clarity? Because it's a hard skill. Clarity, you give clarity when you explain when you explain the details. If you put effort into explaining the details, really everything will be more easier. Even a detail like, hey, I will do it in this time to that moment, and it will take so much time because this and that. So the world is said to be a hologram. So a hologram has a property that when you divide it, when you divide a hologram, both of the parts of the hologram have the whole information about the whole thing. So if you divide again a half of it, you have still the same property. So in 13 kilobytes, you actually can put the whole word, right? But the time of building the memory is very long then, and and can take, for example, 1 billion years, right, or something like this. So we don't have access. We don't have access to the whole communication, but possibly, in fact, maybe even we have the whole information about everything. So is communication really necessary? Yeah. Well, yes, it's necessary. Leibniz was a 17th century philosopher who said that the whole world is structured from monads. And a monad is, every one of you is a monad, and everything that is here is a monad. And it works like this, that it just, it's a pure component of the world. So communication is actually discovering something in the monad and comes always with attention. With consciousness. We cannot observe the whole as in one time. We need to focus. We need to direct our attention to certain points. So that's why distractions are so heavy. So what kind of communication channels do we have? And now I go back to the hot and cold communication that I said in the beginning. This is a very interesting distinction. There is a philosopher called Marshall McLuhan, and he said that medium is the message. So actually there is a lot about communication in the medium we choose. And this is, again, a hard skill, because we can choose the medium if we are using a hot channel or a cold channel. A hot channel means that it has less participation. What I'm saying now is very hot because you don't interact too much with me now. But when I ask you, for example, Christian, do you think that Messenger is a good way to ask questions about payments?
Definitely not.
Okay. What kind of medium is better for that?
Just calling the person.
Okay. Well, so that's I think it's a good answer, because then you are interactive, and then you can give a chance to that person to answer immediately. Oh, because maybe he didn't get the transfer, and he doesn't want to write because when he writes, then it goes. So choosing the channel actually on the type of message that you're sending is quite important, and a cold channel, that's counterintuitive for some of you and for me also, that a cold channel is where that gives more participation. So you can answer, you can do something with it, you can actually speak. You have more space. So in the mind experiment in the beginning, if everything that we send to the world goes to the world or can be received after a year, for example, so it means that it's a colder or a hotter communication word. Did it make colder? No, hotter. It's hotter because it's not interactive. You cannot do. It's too hot to touch. You cannot touch it because the message is too hot and it goes. You cannot interact with it. So in the world where you don't have, when you cannot do anything, like for example radio. When you listen to radio, you cannot even stop. You can't even stop a radio. It's the hottest medium. So let's make an experiment. For example, Slack, WhatsApp, Messenger, Chat, Telegram, Signal, all of them are almost the same type. In everyone you can edit. Can you edit on WhatsApp? I'm not sure. But email, for example, cannot be edited. This is also an interesting communication channel. So when you send a really well-thought assumption, task managers are hotter. They're colder because they give you more interaction. You can change, you can add more messages. Video recordings, video meetings. Recording is hotter than a meeting because on a meeting you can interact. Audio recordings, on-site meetings are really cold, and they are good that they're back. I'm happy that we're here. That's something amazing because we couldn't do it for a very long time. And presentations, if they are interactive, they seem to be more efficient in communication. So, what is the coldest from here? Do you have an idea? Which? Email. Thank you. Exactly. I think it's email. Kasia?
When you are saying about the definition of cold and hot, in your definition, it's absolutely opposite from what recruiters are understanding about it. Because when we are saying hot or warm, it means that person can give us a response, and that warm is kind of connection, and it's warm. And when it's cold, we are feeling freezing, just feeling alone when we are making some kind of message or respond, and no one is answering.
Yeah, because this is from in the frame of in a different frame, in a frame of emotional frame. I think it's about the emotional frame because it's more warm to get interaction, and it's colder without interaction. But in this McLuhan theory, it was this way that I said, and that's just why I'm saying that's counter. But this is about our assumptions. Assumptions, yeah. So I'm happy that we figured it out that there were different assumptions. All right, no summary yet. Almost summary. Pro tip: hard skill exercise to use the most desired communication channel. Yeah, that's a good pro tip. Do it. So summary: easy things to remember and hard to practice. Routines, channels, methods, iterations, game theory. I said about the dilemma of the prisoner, and that iterations, when we close things into chapters, into projects, into tasks, then we have an option to make an iteration. So that's why senior developers like the word iteration, and they use methods to explain what is front end, and use always good channels to say that I'm not going to be able to work tomorrow. So do they call, or do they write a message on Messenger, or they send an email? What do they do actually? But tomorrow, yeah, email, yeah, email routines, the 6 routines that I said. So remember, reality is an illusion, the universe is a hologram, and buy gold, buy Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls TV show. Always remember that it's good time to have some reading and watch the sources. So, and last thing, the hottest thing ever, the hottest communication that I will have to the world is when I die. So when I die, all my communication will hot. So will be hot. So remember, everything you communicate to the world will remain, but you won't change it later. So please be careful what you communicate and be good. Sorry. We'll explain you later. So thank you for listening. You're invited also to WarsawJS, always the second Wednesday of the month in Warsaw. There is a meetup in Warsaw, and thank you very much, Andersen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Piotr. Do you have any questions to Piotr? No? Okay. Yes, one. Okay.
Actually, it's missed out of topic today. Most of you probably know we are organizer of the WarsawJS, right? And do you have any plan to, I don't know, somehow crack of JS or something like this? because WarsawJS is most often happen. I'm because following on YouTube, yeah. And do you have any idea to like a Krakow.js?
Yes, there is an organization that's called Meet.js, and they also organize in Krakow. So I hope they will recover, and they will have the meetups in Krakow. You can say.
Yeah, we are going to have a meetup with Meet.js on 25th of August.
Cool.
So you are invited.
I will just add the commentary that now we will say not as cold as that, but as hot as that.
That's hard. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, do you have any other questions? No? Okay. So thank you very much, Piotr, for your presentation. And behalf of Andersen Polska, I would like to thank you very much for participate of this meetup. So you can grab some more drinks and chat or discuss. And thank you very much for attending of our meetup in Krakow office. Thank you.